This is the Bible of the electrogenic cell. It's not just the best book ever written on the subject, it's the only book ever written on this subject. Brought to you by supporters of Christ.
All right, so depending on how long this video goes, y'all might see me limping. Y'all might see me limping on this cane a little bit. If you feel sympathy, feel free to send me some Cash App, Zells, etc. But I'm gonna try to. I am in my Wolverine mode though. I am in Wolverine mode. I am in Wolverine mode though. This is a 4 to 6 week injury. I'm trying to be all back 100% in 4 to 6 days though. You know, that's what I'm on. I am happy though. Yeah, baby. Oh my goodness. And how many of y'all have been doing y'all homework? How many of y'all have been doing y'all homework? Right? How many people have been doing their homework? How many people have been doing their homework? Right? What was homework? What was the homework for week 4, day number 3? Anybody? Does anybody know what that is off top? Week 4, day number 3. Does anybody know what the homework was? Look at that. See, y'all trolling. Come on now. Y'all gotta, yeah. And this is why I haven't been discussing the homework, because the homework is something that's in the book. It's not in the YouTube videos. There's a lot that's in this book that's not going to be in the YouTube videos. There's a lot that's going to be in this book that's not going to be in the YouTube videos. But I will give you a hint. 99% of the homework is from this book, the Electrogenic Bible. 99%. Now, do y'all want to discuss? Do y'all want to have a quick discussion on changing the world real quick? Ooh. Let's have a quick discussion on changing the world real quick. Since we have created inspiration, the 3 biggest health workout internet platforms have all now made God videos. Oh my God. Since the inception of inspiration, the Mind Pump Show, Andrew Huberman, and Diary of a CEO, all of them have been making Christ content. I kid you not. All of them have been making Christ content. And now everybody's talking about, I'll leave it there. I'll just leave it there. Okay, Tika's a few seconds late. But she's the only one on point. It's all right. You'll notice when you go through the book, though, the homework, just in case, for the cheaters, if you're studying the book like you're supposed to be, then the homework will pop right out to you. But just in case you're cheating, right after Rich finishes the lecture, that's where the homework pops up at. And then after the homework assignment, you got additional notes that just, goes along with the homework. Just additional notes, you know what I'm saying, for you to put in your back pocket. Yeah, just additional notes. Mitochondria in the membrane, negative 150 to negative 180 millivolts. These are all jewels that, again, everything is not going to be on YouTube. That I just can't stress it. Now, Tika's going through the book. Tika could tell you that no matter how much information, and I appreciate the fact that everybody appreciates the class, especially the Patreon folks, but and I'm about to send out some work to the Patreon folks, specifically to start building up, building towards the midterm. Yeah, to start building up towards the midterm. So I have some specific study guides, cheat codes. But we do have midterm. We do have midterm approaching. So y'all need to be on y'all grind. All right. So in your book, let's flip ahead real quick. In your book, let's flip ahead real quick to page. Now, I don't want you to write nothing in the chat. All right. I don't want you to write nothing in the chat, people. This is not for the people in the chat. This is not for the YouTube family. Right. This is for the book holders. Right. Go to page 273. Right. Go to page 273. When you get to page 273, that's where you'll start to see. Right. That's where you'll start to see where we're going in terms of what the midterms will look like. So we have another few weeks before then. Right? We have another few weeks before then, but I just want to give you an idea of what that's going to look like. All right, so from page 273 to 286. 273 to 286 will give you a good idea of what the midterm is going to look like. This is for my melanin health coaches. My melanin health coaches. We are building future businesses. We are building future businesses. We are building future businesses. I want y'all to understand this. We are building future businesses. The world is going to need you. I'm telling you, listen, Andrew Huberman, the Mind Pump Show, and Diary of a CEO, they all talking about Christ and interweaving Christ into their. Oh my God. That's crazy. That's all I can say is that's crazy right now. That is wild, bro. All right. Let's get some support. Like, share, super chat, subscribe, join the Patreon, get your products. Go get your bitters, hit the Cash App, hit the Zelle, hit the PayPal. Let's do it, man. Let's do the things that we need to do to keep our movement moving. Appreciate you. Appreciate you in everything. Appreciate you in everything. All right. Where we at today? We are week 5. Week 5, day 1. I got one leg. Yo, I hurt myself, man. That was crazy over the weekend. playing basketball with the 16-year-olds. But it's all good. I got my Wolverine thing going, so I'll be back to 100% before you know it. All right, so page 145 inside the book. Ooh, I'm flexing my new book and all that. Ooh, I'm flexing my new book and all that. I'm flexing my new book and all that. Yeah. A mitochondrion suspended like a throne, an angstrom ruler stretching from complex 1 to complex 4. Oxygen atoms flickering like stars. A small inset shows a woman taking a breath. Her inhale triggers an animation. Electrons falling, protons pushed, turbines turning. This book is cold. But yes, 98% of the homework from this book is in this book, right? 98%. Right? We can't forget this is the work. We're building the school. Right? We're building the school. So we gotta get down, getting down. Let me get today's lesson up on the screen.
Myron! Myron! What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Everybody reading no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Wait, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks.
You called yesterday 2 weeks. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. Inky. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. Inky books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even a, first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I got the books right here. I'm looking at the pictures. You know, it ain't nothing nasty about this. So what are you talking about? I got all the books right here. What are you talking about?
Myron, you don't even know how to read. Every time we get mail, you bring it to me. You think I don't know that?
I got hooked on Phoenix. Now, what you talking about? I was hooked on Phoenix, so I know how to read.
As of when? Because first of all, hooked on phonics, I believe it's for kids. There's no such thing as hooked on Phoenix. And if I recall, you're the same person that thought reindeer was pronounced reinder, and you're the same person that thought pigeon was pronounced piggion.
All right. So today what we're going to go over is oxygen. We're going to talk about oxygen a little bit. Right? We're going to talk about oxygen a little bit. And then we're going to talk about electrons a little bit. Little bit. Yeah, we're going to move into a little quantum mechanics a little bit. Yeah, so we're kind of going to keep building from where we left off last week. So don't feel well, I should say last class, right? Because our weeks is different than the rest of the world. You know what I'm saying? We're on a whole nother, right? So should I take this down? Yeah, we need to take this down. So I guess the first thing that I can get into y'all minds to start getting y'all back into the groove. Yeah, that's why I haven't done a live. That's why I didn't go live. I made it to Comedicine because that's, we almost had 20 shows in a row, but I didn't go live during the daytime because I could barely put any weight on my leg. Yeah, I could barely put any weight on my leg. So I had to have, the teacher had to have a sick day. So the last thing we were talking about, though, was the mitochondria membrane potential, right? So today we're going to kind of segue from here. We're going to segue a little bit. Wow, that looked nasty. Man, why that look so nasty? Man, get something super harsh. All right, but we're going to segue into, I guess because maybe it wasn't fully dry when I start writing on it. But oxygen is two roles, right? Oxygen's two roles, CO2 and H2O, right? CO2 and H2O. And we're going to keep our secrets, right? We're going to keep our secrets intact, right? So remember we drew out our little secret little circle of life, right? Where we had, the body using oxygen because electrons follow oxygen and oxygen follows magnetism. And magnetism is glued to iron. And, we had that whole little thing drawn out. Keep that in mind when you look at these two basic molecules, right? When you look at these two basic molecules, keep that in mind, right? Because electricity is the thing that determines the living, right? Remember we talked about a living cell, the essence of what a living cell is, right? So oxygen is that key. Oxygen is that key. Matter of fact, go to AmericanHealer.website right now and get your blue magic, right? Get your blue magic. It smells just like the ocean, right? Go get your blue magic. As I'm just thinking in my mind, like the algae is what transformed this planet. If not for the algae providing the oxygen, and they're still providing the oxygen. In fact, the algae on Earth are the primary life form responsible for oxygen and carbon. It's the algae that provides us with oxygen and carbon. So no algae, we forget that our food chain starts with algae, not plants. You know what I'm saying? It is, even in the protein universe, eggs are the best protein. They're ranked the number one protein because we don't compare them to algae. If we compared them to algae, Different story, right? But anyway, just keep in mind that oxygen always adds that electric component. Oxygen adds the electric or the bioelectric. Let me do that. Because you could just stick something into an outlet for electricity, right? But the bioelectric component comes from oxygen. Now, open up any of, I ain't gonna say any of your books, but a lot of your books. Have a section in the book because we repeated this a few times. Okay. It's in a couple of the books, but if you have your They Not Like Us book, right? They Not Like Us. They Not Like Us. If you have your They Not Like Us book, right? The Electrician's Radio Anatomy Manual. Right? If you don't have this book, go to Amazon, add this to your cart, check out. Right? But on page 249, right now, mind you, this is in at least 30 books. It's in like 30 different books, right? But we talk about, in fact, the first book I believe I started putting this section in was the photochemistry book. So it's kind of all throughout the electrician books. But we started to add specificity to electron volts, right? An electron volt is the measure of an amount of kinetic energy gained by a single electron accelerating from rest through an electric potential difference of 1 volt in a vacuum. 1 EV equals to the exact value 1.602 blah, 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 blah. A unit of energy or work. The work required to move an electron through a potential difference of 1 volt. 1 EV would correspond to an infrared photon of a wavelength 1240 nanometers or a frequency of 241.8 terahertz. Right? And then we go through UVC, UVB, UVA, far infrared, near infrared, medium, visible light, etc. We go through and break, like just break them down to the specific electron volts. Why? Because I knew back then what we were building towards, right? I knew back then what we were building towards, right? Even though I don't have the bazillion dollars, we struggling to keep the lights on. The world is following us. The world is following us. So I already knew where we were going. And since it's written in the papyri that the metu, right, the blood vessels, the lymphatic vessels, the nerves, all of those things fall under what they called in Kemet the metu. The metu were designed to conduct light. Light is on face value, but it's also always been a metaphor for wisdom and information. Information implies structure, sequence, and a variety of other things that were ridiculed by science, specifically coming from Kemet, up until the 1920s, 1940s, by a very small select group of people. They began to respect the gangster of Kemet, right? But the world at large had already been so miseducated for 1,500 years. Most people still are confused. But a very small group of people, Schrodinger, Niels Bohr, them type of folks in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, they begin to realize what those pyramid builders were talking about was actual fact. And so now 2025, right? So we can go all the way back to Kemet. We can go back to Kemet for the origins of chemiluminescence and also therapeutic uses of bioelectricity, right? We've already done that, right? If you don't have those books, go to Amazon, add the Rough Ashlar, add the trigonometry book, add the Legend of Wuxia book, add all those books to your cart. Get on your Kemetic naturopathy journey, right? But even if we fast forward, you had fringe Germans, because Germans are always on the heels of what is going on in Kemet, or what went on in Kemet anyway. So you had Fritz Popp, right? And he had a small collective of people at the time following what he was doing, trying to reinvigorate the idea of chemiluminescence under the phrase biophotons. Fritz Popp was largely laughed out of science. Guess what? Following the doctor with the gold teeth, right? 2025, summer of 2025, mainstream science is now accepting and promoting the concept that cells produce light. Are you not entertained? Right. But anyway, so like I said, in this book, the Christian's Radio Anatomy Manual, right? One of the early books, we talk about the electron volt. We continue on page 249. We say the electromagnetic spectrum of electron volts is based on the movement of electrons. The rate of A you have and skip down, we go to where it says radio range. 1 hertz up to 3,000 billion hertz. Below radio is cellular. Extremely low frequency electric and magnetic fields occupy the lower part of the electromagnetic spectrum in the frequency range from 0 to 100 kilohertz. ELF, EMF result from electrically charged particles. Right? So this is what I'm talking about. Right? So when you open up an article or a journal and it says ultra weak biophoton emission, ultra weak biophoton emission is not exactly a scientific, it's being forced with your hand pushed behind your back like this. Your hand is behind your back, so they forcing. So science is forced. We got their hand behind their back like this. So they're using the term ultra weak. Ultra weak. You know what I'm saying? Like, why does it have to be ultra weak? Where is that? You know what I'm saying? Ultra weak photon emission. You know what I'm saying? UPE, ultra weak photon emission. The disrespect, right? But it's a start. It's a start, right? It's a start. I told y'all we've been banging on the drum, playing the trumpet since 2022. July 7th, July of 2022, 722. That magical number, the Kemetic number for pi, 722 is when we started our campaign. And 3 years later, or 2.5 years later, science now makes the admission. Okay. All right. All right. So what? The cells produce light. So what? The cells produce light. I've been saying that the cells run on light. Everybody attacked me for it. I got turned into the black sheep of the black sheeps because the black holistic, the black holistic online universe is already like the black sheep in terms of the whole. So I got turned into the black sheep of the black sheep for saying that Sabi was wrong and that Robert Becker was wrong, Not necessarily wrong, just the information was incomplete. Right? The information is incomplete. The body's not exactly electric. The body runs on light and water. And that was a long time ago. That's more than a decade ago. Right? But it's interesting now, 2025, to see science jump on it. So we're going to dig, today we're going to go into we're going to go into those lovely electrons. We're going to talk about them a little bit. And oxygen and things of that nature, right? Things of that nature, right? But these are the two stars of the show in terms of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide, and water. In fact, these two guys make up photosynthesis. This is the magic right here. This is the magic right here, right? Plants have the ability to put carbon dioxide together with water. And then this right here, this O2 gets released back into the environment. So the O2 from the water gets separated, released back into the environment. This water joins onto this carbon, and then that starts the entire food. That starts the food process. So again, when you understand the photosynthesis process, it only makes sense that the cells produce light, because light is the unseen star of the show, right? It's light driving this process. It's light driving the packing. It's light driving the creation of these new bonds. So it only makes sense that when you unpack the energy, light be included, right? So we got to get those old ideas. We got to get those old ideas from 1824 out of circulation, right? We got to get those old ideas from 1824 out of circulation, right? So 1824, they discovered the concept of calories. 1961, or between 1920 and 1961, we get an electron transport chain, right? So think about that. I want y'all to really absorb that, because when you're out preaching the gospel, right? Because that's what I need y'all to be. I need y'all to be out there with these books, bringing people back. I need you to be going to people's houses. I need you to be going to people's houses, you know, sitting there with the book open, breaking it down like bop, 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 bop. Yeah, this is what this is. And this is why heart failure is the #1 cause. Bop, bop, bop. Like you got to be right there breaking it down and bringing them back. Like, oh yeah, go to Amazon. And you, the same way I'm telling you, if you don't have this book, go to Amazon, add this to your cart, check out. As you're explaining, you have to also share that with the people you're teaching. Go to Amazon, get this book specifically, add this to your cart, check out. Right? If you're trying to figure out tendons, joints, etc., go get the 360 book, 360 Sports Articulation. Add those books to your cart. Check. Like, we have specific books so that as you're having conversation, you can direct people to specific books. We even have the free book. Use the link. We even have free books that you can give to people as well. So we have kind of like a no excuse kind of space, right? But you need to be able to explain this and break this down, right? We have to get out of the 1824 calorie thinking. That's 1824. 100 years later, they discovered the Krebs cycle. And they never changed the lingo. The world has already created billion-dollar industries based on diets and calories and all these different ideas. You know what I'm saying? So it's cool to use the phrase burning calorie, you know, like a slang, you know, in conversation. But You got to know and you got to teach. Like, nah, that's not exactly. I know you was taught that, but listen, let me tell you the truth of that. You know, as taught to me by Dr. Inky. Here's the real deal. Let me explain to you. 1824. That's why you have the time. That's why you have all these tools. All these teaching things are teaching tools. So you can go out there and be able to drop it, like, you know what I'm saying, in a way where you can't be denied. Right? You can't be denied when you show hospitals 1760. Everybody got AI in their pocket. Tell them to look up. When's the first medical school created in America? Like, this ain't no, you ain't got to be quiet. These facts ain't going to change. Tell them to look it up. When was the first medical school created in America? 1765. Don't let them take you to France or Germany or Africa. In America, when was the first medical school? 1765. Bam. Okay. When did we discover the Krebs cycle? When did we discover electron transport chain? When did we discover calories? Oh, that's what happened. Okay. That's why we have metabolic disease, because calorie is fake. But the personal training industry is built off the health industry. When you go get NASM certification, the NASM certification book, which I have somewhere around here, probably mixed into my MCAT books. When you go get the NASM certification, it comes right out of it's like the NASM certification is almost like MCAT for dummies. MCAT is the books that you take to get into medical school. MCAT for dummies is like the NASM test. So if academia is flawed in what they're putting forward as the curriculum for the study of the human body, every group that pulls from that tree is going to be flawed. And that's what we have, right? But we are in the exciting time period of reformation. It's just the fact that we are the reformers that you at home may be struggling with. You are the reformers. So when people look back and you look back and it's like a group of people that made a huge change in the world. And okay, in this time period, it's me and you. Like, I need you to like settle into that. Like, I need you to. Yeah, I need you to get that. It's us. Like, yeah, we gotta reform the world. You know, that's like a huge task, but it's not really that big of a task because we have the internet, right? So, oxygen is not for burning. Oxygen is for bioelectricity. Oxygen is for bioelectricity. And just because oxygen is used in burning doesn't mean oxygen is, exclusively for burning. So wherever oxygen is, that means combustion is going on or burning is going on. Like, that is not a thing. That is not a thing. We have to dispel that. I have to get that out of your DNA. Right? I got to get that out of your DNA. So in your body, when you breathe in, it's almost like these are your two nostrils. Yo, you can use that for a pneumatic device, right? Two nostrils for oxygen. And oxygen has two destinations, right? Each oxygen molecule you breathe in is either going to wind up as new water, aquagenesis, or it's going to wind up to help you to get rid of carbon or recycle carbon, right? But that's where oxygen is going. And this is why there's a mystery in the textbooks when you look up metabolism. Metabolism is a mystery word. In the textbooks, metabolism is a mystery word. Right? Because when you look up metabolism, it doesn't have an end. There's no end of metabolism. So when you get the definition of metabolism, it hits you in the context is misleading to what it actually really is. Right? And that's a part of the whole big secret. Right? Metabolism is really your pancreas. Metabolism is really your pancreas. That's why diabetes and obesity is so tight together. Metabolism is really like the job of your pancreas. There's no real such a thing as cellular metabolism. That's a thing that's another euphemistic idea that if we dig into it doesn't really exist. Because when you get into the cell and you talk about breaking down proteins, fats, or sugars for energy, it's not called cellular metabolism. It's called cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is there. So it's a part of your respiratory system. Respiration. It's not metabolism, it's respiration. Right? So all of these concepts have to be fine-tuned. In order to fine-tune our health, we have to fine-tune all of the concepts associated with our health. Right? In order to fine-tune our health, we have to fine-tune the concepts associated with our health. All right, one more time. In order to fine-tune our health, we have to fine-tune the concepts associated with our health. All right. So at cytochrome 4, the cycle of electron flow ends. The current, the electricity, right? The current ends with oxygen, right? So our bodies break down the fats, the sugars primarily into a flow of electrons. A flow of electrons. One, two, three, and four. Cytochrome 1, 2, 3, and 4. Complex 1, 2, 3, 4. The flow of electrons goes through here, right? Anytime we have a flow of electrons, we call that electricity, right? That ends with oxygen. That ends with oxygen. So oxygen is the final acceptor of the electricity going through here, right? Electricity is going to go here, stop with oxygen. The protons that normally flow through here are going to stop here with oxygen. And the electrons and protons are going to rebond, right? Break up to make up. They're going to make up, and you're going to get water molecules. you're going to get water molecules. When the electrons rebond with proton, each electron that rebonds with a proton becomes hydrogen again. So when you have two electrons bond with two protons, bond with an oxygen molecule, you have H2O, two hydrogens and an oxygen. You have a water molecule. This is the only place on Earth where you actually get pure water, right? Everywhere else, your water has other stuff in it. Only place on Earth you get pure water, right? The buck stops here. That's another way you can remember that. The buck stops there, right? All right. On the periodic table, let's look up the periodic table real quick. Let me pull this up. You said I'm breaking up. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Well, maybe I was saying, maybe. Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe they just wanted to scramble some of the heat that was coming through the airwaves. You know what I'm saying? Because, listen, that's another reason why y'all gotta have the books. Because see, they can't scramble the book. You know what I'm saying? The book is in your house already. Right? The book is in your house already. Okay, let me go here. Let me get a periodic table real quick. One time for the one time. Let's see if we can get. Okay, here's a great one. Here's a great one on Chemistry Talk website. So let's go over to Chemistry Talk website. You see that? Okay. So electronegativity, right? So remember the other day we talked about the two behaviors of energy in the universe, right? Attraction, repulsion. Attraction, repulsion, right? Attraction, repulsion. So electronegativity is basically how attracted electrons are to different atoms, right? So remember we talked about the periodic table in general. I was saying that the periodic table, each atom has its own unique qualities, size, weight, behaviors, everything. So the periodic table was a way to kind of organize all of these different qualities and make them make sense, right? Organize all these different qualities and try to make them make sense with each other. Similar to what Islam does with the 99 attributes of Allah, or, gods, demigods, all of those things. Electronegativity is a very important It's a very important biological characteristic in atoms, right? It's how attractive electrons are to each particular atom. That's very important because it determines, I'm not going to say determines, but it contributes to how bonds are formed, to poisons, antioxidants, a plethora of behavior in the redox universe is based on electronegativity, right? And why that's important is because, again, when I say that electricity follows oxygen, I'm speaking specifically in terms of biology, biochemistry, right? This is the real reason, right? This is the real reason, because I know you done heard 1,000 different web pages and conspiracy theorists and all that tell you that fluoride is going on your pineal gland. I know. And listen, some things is not worth correcting. Every so often, I'll take a step and my foot, my ankle will remind me that I'm injured. Like every few minutes I get into the information and I forget that I'm supposed to be using this cane right now, my foot will remind me. But I'm about to show you the truth of that whole fluoride thing, right? Here's the fluoride truth right here. So you can see it for yourself on the periodic table. You see that? That is the truth of fluoride or fluorine and all its derivatives, right? It is able to overpower. It is able to overpower oxygen. That is the real problem with fluoride and fluorine. They are able to overpower oxygen and steal electrons. Now, if we understand that electrons is the life, life is following electrons, literally stealing your electrons is stealing your life, right? So for me, sometimes it's not worth debunking something, right? Because if somebody has invested some time and energy into creating a boogeyman out of fluoride, and it should be a boogeyman, even if the mechanism, even if it's kind of made up like Santa Claus style, like Easter Bunny style, it still serves a purpose. You still know that, hey, you probably, if possible, when possible, to, opt out of fluorine and fluoride, right? But this is the reason why, right? So the periodic table is arranged in electrical terms in a variety of ways. And electronegativity is one of those things. It lets you know what atoms are the strongest in terms of being able to snatch electrons, pull electrons, right? And so fluorine has been turned into a bad guy, like over, before we even had a chance to get to know him. Like Drake, you know what I'm saying? Drake done stole everybody's girlfriend. Drake just started doing things with people, girlfriends, fiancés, and wives in the music business, and they all turned on him. This is what fluorine is doing. Fluorine is irresistible attraction between fluorine and electrons, and boom. So as long as fluorine is not around, oxygen is the most attractive to electrons, right? Oxygen is the most attractive to electrons. So when I laid out that little shortcut, like I don't want y'all to underestimate when I was saying electricity follows the oxygen follows the magnetism is stuck to the iron. So our body uses iron inside the pigment, right? Iron inside the pigment for magnetism to bring the oxygen, to bring the electricity, to like, that's literally what's happening, right? But it may sound weird to you because we have the preconditioning, right? Almost the brainwash, like the brainwashing. We have the brainwashing that, again, this is why we have the timeline. You know, you need to go get the Beyond Structured Water book to really understand what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? The Beyond Structured Water book is going to take this into the next century, right? But the timeline is so important because the timeline tells the truth about everything. You can't lie with the timeline. Like the timeline to be evidence in court that you can't get around. You know what I'm saying? The timeline is everything. So again, we had medical schools when 1765, right? When was the understanding of quantum mechanics? Quantum mechanics came in 19th century. Quantum mechanics came after Max Planck and Maxwell. Maxwell is the guy who did the early formulas for, electromagnetic radiation. Max Planck, on the other hand, he's studying hydrogen and black body radiation. All of this is happening in the window of from 1865 to 1900. That's the craziest part. All of this is happening like in that window after quote unquote Lincoln, right? So after Lincoln is where the most it just happens to be coincidence that when black folks are released from the plantations, the most powerful scientific discoveries in our time are done. So after 1865 is when Max Planck starts doing his thing, Maxwell starts doing his thing, and then 1900 is when you get the early foundation of quantum mechanics. Like they come up with the term quantum mechanics, but they came up with the term, but they didn't really. It's like getting a beat, but you didn't write the lyrics yet. You got the beat, you done listen to the beat, kind of vibed out to it. You got a rough idea what you want to do to the beat, but you ain't make a song yet. It's kind of like that. So 1900, quantum mechanics is a vibe. It's not really a science yet. It's not a science until Copenhagen, between 1920 and 1940, a couple of scientists locked in and they start doing their thing. But you can say between 1900 and 1940 is the formation of quantum mechanics, right? You can even stretch it back to the 1870s, 1880s to include Max Planck and Maxwell in that group, right? So you can stretch and go quantum mechanics 1870s to 1940, right? Medical school was created in 1765. So I'm telling you all this information and I'm repeating this stuff because you really need to have this on tap. You need to know this stuff. This is the stuff you need to know. This is your armor. This is your armor. If you're talking to a PhD, if you're talking to a medical surgeon, if you're talking to a medical doctor or a surgeon, a cardiologist, you can walk them through with what I'm telling you and bring them to inspiration. That's the whole purpose of this. So you can go out and teach and bring people back, right? I'm telling you how to do it. I'm telling you how to do it, especially since now we done co-opted our Friday night degree work class with studies, right? Simply just knowing this timeline, because 1765, what are they trying to do? They're trying to explain the human body with the laws of physics solely, because in that time period, nothing else exists. Physics is the cutting edge science. So that's what they're trying to explain everything with. So that's why they're telling folks, you know, the heart is a pump, you know, all these concepts that's coming from the 1500s to the 1700s, like all these concepts is based on physics, right? There's no quantum mechanics until 1870s. Max Planck is really the guy who kicked it off with the black body research. And then you go into Copenhagen with, what is it, Schrodinger and Niels Bohr, and, you know, you got those J.J. Thomas in there, right? J.J. Thomas, he laid the foundation that Einstein stood right on, you know, but it's a bunch of guys, you know what I'm saying? It's a bunch of guys, but it's all in that window. Oddly enough, you know, if you believe in coincidences, have at it. I'm not a coincidence person. I think it's very interesting that after 1865, all of these world-changing, you know. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is some of what we've taken as conspiracy, some of what we've taken as a economic plot evolved naturally, not necessarily as a vicious plot by an evil cult to, you know, like, no, there was no other information. They started medical school, ignorant of pretty much how the body works. The one thing they knew was people were dying, and people that were dying needed people to try to help them get better, especially since the church had killed most of the herbalists, like literally killed. Because if you was a herbalist, the early doctors were all herbalists. They were all into the plants, the sun, the water. Any of that could get you killed. The church saw to that. So the church is responsible for killing off the doctors, right? So now they got to come with Western academia, and they got to replace, you know, but what do you replace them with? If you've taken away the natural stuff, what do you know, you're doing crazy stuff. That's where cannibal medicine comes in, where they were literally like feeding people body parts for health, which is the roots that Liver King tapped into. What Liver King doing wasn't new. He tapped into something old. That's why he called it the ancestral program, right? Cannibal medicine. Right? Cannibal medicine. That's what he packaged into. His animal body parts in a capsule. Take these and, you know, you'll be strong, whatever. Even though he was faking because he was on steroids, but the concept already existed. This is what they were doing. They were doing bloodletting. Like if you had an infection, they'd cut you and let a certain amount of blood go out in hopes that whatever was infecting you would come out in the blood. But those were the concepts that they were using. They didn't even have medicine when they started medical school. They had wild stuff like cocaine and opium. And so it wasn't even like medicine. You know what I'm saying? They had drugs like Get High, which was plants, you know, oddly enough. And then ritual, wild, you know, like cannibal stuff. And, you know, like that was what it was. They didn't have anything, you know, they was working with the laws of physics, and the human body is not governed by the laws of physics. The human body is not governed by the laws of physics. There are parts of the body where physics applies. But when you get to the energy patterns of the body, and the most important part is not physics. It's what we know of today as quantum mechanics. So there's a 200-year gap between the time quantum mechanics and between the inception of medical school, the invention of the reinvention, let's say reinvention, because we got to keep the underworld of Assad, we got to keep that. The reinvention of quantum mechanics, and then the merger between quantum mechanics and the physical body. That's 1961, when they figure out the electron transport chain. Once they figure out the electron transport chain, now quantum mechanics goes from an abstract science. Because remember, it's abstract at first. Double slit experiment and photoelectric effect and all that. That's stuff that they looking at, right? That's stuff they're observing. That's not stuff that they're like doctors. They haven't internalized any of this yet. It's not until the electron transport chain where they realize, okay, wait a minute. There are subatomic particles regulating the human body. Right now, today, August 2025, we are still in the brand new discovery period. Listen to what I'm saying. We're in the brand new discovery period. It seems like, because the doctors get paid a lot of money, the hospitals are real big, the governments work with the hospital. It seems like it's all built up. It seems like it's no opportunity. It seems like it's David versus it's Enki versus Goliath. You know what I'm saying? It seems like it's an insurmountable, you know what I'm saying? But I'm telling you, the slingshot game is tough. The slingshot game is tough. Yo, I'm telling you, we got a mean slingshot game. You know what I'm saying? We got a mean slingshot game. It's tough. Trust me. It's wide open. The field is wide open. They just start putting 2 and 2 together. It's just this year. 2 months ago. Wait, August. 2.5 months ago. Literally. Is the first admission from Western academia that is light produced in the human cells. 2.5 months. That's 10 weeks. 10 weeks. We had medical school since 1765. It's not until 2025 that they admit light is produced in the cell. From the power of hydrogen, from the sun. Right. Meanwhile, in Kemet, that was the blueprint. That was the starting point in Kemet. The starting point in Kemet was that Atum, the power of the sun, the intelligence of the sun, communicates through our vessels in our bodies. That was the starting. That was ground zero. That was the starting point. It took us to 2025, Roman era, to figure that out. 5125 by my count. So when you look at the periodic table, right, that's what this is trying to tell you. So you don't have to believe any weird pineal gland stories anymore about calcification and fluoride and all that. What actually the problem with fluoride is that fluoride redirects the electricity in your body. It redirects the electricity in your body. Fluoride or fluorine is a Pied Piper, right? Fluoride / fluorine is the Pied Piper, right? Fluorine is going to go Your body is going to mostly view fluorine as a toxin anyway and try to get rid of it. So as your body's trying to get rid of it, it has a hold of all the electrons. So as you're getting rid of it, all your electrons are going with it. It's just like when music gets into the mind of the children and the music comes in with the violence, the drugs, and the sex. This is not just happened to our generation. This is, if we look back, generation after generation and after generation has dealt with corporate entities disguising their interests to target children through music. That's just a thing, right? But you can't get rid of the music because the children gonna follow the music, which is the story of the Pied Piper, right? The Pied Piper plays the music and gets the children. When the people try to get rid of the Pied Piper, they successfully get rid of the Pied Piper, but they also get rid of their children, right? Be careful what you wish for, you might get it. That's the thing that goes on with fluorine. Fluorine has the electrons on lock. Wherever it goes, the electrons will follow. In the absence of fluorine, oxygen is the done data. Okay, oxygen is the GOAT. Oxygen is the big homie. So the electrons, electricity follows oxygen. Now, if we simplify it and remove all these players, right, it's just the basics being played out on a different stage. What's the basics? Electricity makes magnetic fields makes electric, the chicken and the egg, electricity and magnetism thing. But we're using proxies, right? In biology and biochemistry, you're using a proxy, you're using a stand-in, you're using a substitute teacher, right? So the substitute teacher for electricity is oxygen. The substitute teacher for magnetism is iron. So throughout your brain, throughout your heart, throughout your blood, throughout your mitochondria, you have iron, right? You have iron because you need that magnetism, right? The magnetism is for the oxygen. The oxygen is for the electricity. The electricity is so that you can constantly produce pure, holy water. Your cells are the only source of pure water on earth. Period. There's no other source of pure water on this planet except your cells. Outside of that, the process that creates pure water inside your cells is also the process that recycles ATP, right? Which is your source of fresh light inside your cell. Now, that same process that produces water, that recycles your light and kinetic energy, right? Disguised as ATP, right? That same process also produces all of your non-essential amino acids, which are the primary building blocks for the body, right? So that one process that we didn't learn about, we didn't know about in America until between 1920 and 1960. Well, that's the main process of the whole body. So the fact that we had medical schools in 1765, but we didn't know how the body worked until just now. Just now. Just now. Let me add this back in. Let me add this back in because this is always a good kicker for me. This always gets me a laugh. If it don't make you laugh, tough. But this is always funny for me. Where is this at? Hold up. Let me see. Is this the article? Let me see. Is this it? Let's look right here real quick. What did this say? What would this say? Blah, blah, blah. Let me see. What does it say right here? Right here. Right? So right here, look, we just got evidence-based medicine in 1991. Hey, yo, chill. We just got evidence-based medicine in 1991. So I don't know what y'all think been going on. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And it starts, look, here's the funny thing. It starts right here. It starts in the 60s. It starts right after the discovery or the final fleshing out of the electron transport chain. So they just figure out in the 1960s how cells work. Right. And so once that happens, you have all of these, groundbreaking realizations that the medical system is upside down. All right. That's what you have going on. You have all of these groundbreaking realizations that the medical system is upside down, culminating in the 1990 creation of what they call now evidence-based medicine, new phenomena. So we had medical schools 1765. We didn't get evidence-based medicine until 1990. Yeah. Do what you will. Right? Do what you will. All right. So oxygen has the highest electronegativity in your body. Definitely out of the major elements in your body, which is carbon. Wait, let's go back to that. Can we go back to that? Right. And you think about the majors, right? When you think about the majors, look at the majors. Look how interesting this is. Electronegativity almost tells you the entire story of biology, right? Look at the main players. Hydrogen is right here, right? So that tells you what? Hydrogen is the least electrically negative. What did I tell you about hydrogen? One of the gifts of hydrogen is that there's only a proton and an electron there. And so it's easy for hydrogen to be split and utilized for energy, which is what we see in terms of the sun, photosynthesis. We see hydrogen being broken down into protons and electrons to be utilized for energy, right? Now, on the other side is where you see all of the other three big players. All of the three other big players is right there. Look at that. Look at that. Carbon is right there, right? Then there's nitrogen. Then there's oxygen. The three big players is back to back to back. The three big players is back to back to back. Your body is primarily made of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, right? So electronegativity basically tells you the whole story. Yeah. So right there, it lets you know that the movement of electrons is going to dictate. All right. Now, another thing that's important is so that we begin to get the understanding, right? Because sometimes we got to build on something, Sometimes we got to build on something, right? And so that's why the school system is like first grade, second grade, fifth grade. It goes up in order. Because some things you got to build on and then find out later on they add more complexity that wasn't all wise, right, and exact. It was more of a stepping stone to get to the next thing, right? So when we think of electricity, as a flow of electrons, right? That is physics. That is our mind brainwashed or just taught, like we have a physics outlook on stuff, right? Quantum mechanics, not physics. Quantum mechanics is not physics. Subatomic particles, not governed by the laws of physics. So how electrons actually move through these pigments, right? That's why it's important to always remember that these are iron pigments. These are iron pigments, right? How electrons actually move through these iron pigments is quantum tunneling. So it's not actually the same as like, spilling water and watching water. Like it's not like a flow. It's not a flow like that. You know what I'm saying? It's not a flow exactly like that. But it's a mnemonic device. It's a good tool for us to have in our mind so that we just get the idea of how electrons move through here, cause protons to pool in the matrix and then come back down through cytochrome 5. And recycle ATP, right? But this is quantum tunneling. And quantum tunneling, right? Because it would seem like, because we almost learn about quantum mechanics like as if it's like a carnival sideshow. So people don't really think it applies to their body like that. It's just like, oh, yeah, okay, all right. Oh, you're getting ready to go into that. All right. Yeah. But all of the stuff that people want to know about health, a lot of it is right in here, right? So the new conversations about senescent cells, the senescent cell conversation is built around quantum tunneling, even if they don't say quantum tunneling in the conversation, right? The cancer conversation, right? Cancer cells, quantum tunneling. Right? Because a lot of times damaged cells are supposed to be tagged for apoptosis, right? A lot of times the damaged cell, like the whole, so sidebar, right? Let's go on another adventure. We go on these segues and we get lost in the segue. Come on, pack your backpack, Dora the Explorer, backpack. Come on, we're going on a side quest, right? So if you go to Otto Warburg and Thomas Seyfried, now I got to go to Legend of Wuxia, but we'll just stick with Otto Warburg and Thomas Seyfried, right? The understanding of cancer can only be complete when you add in cellular respiration and the problems originating in the mitochondria, right? Well, a lot of the problems originating in the mitochondria that become cancerous happens right in here, right? The electron transport chain. And a lot of those problems begin with quantum tunneling. Quantum tunneling. So quantum tunneling is like a magical, amazing, miraculous thing, right? It's a magical, amazing, miraculous thing. And the only thing we understand, the only way that we can understand quantum tunneling is geometry. Just saying, for the Masons. Just saying for the Masons. This is why the Sunu, you know, the ancient Kemetic doctors and the Mason. I'm just saying, these are only facts. Right? Because the only way you can understand energy at a certain level is just geometry, right? So well, we get into that at another point. But the geometry of these iron pigments, their distances from one another, their angles, all of those things have to be kept within a very, very, very small frame of accuracy, right? The wider they get spaced out from each other, the more free radicals pop off this chain. The more free radicals pop off this chain, the more your mitochondria go from being the engines of life in the cell to the mechanisms of death in the cell, the mechanism of cancer in the cell, right? And your body already has systems to deal with that. So it marks them, apoptosis, and then your body will break it down, shred like put it in the shredder, you know, put it in the shredder, shred it down, and then your liver, your spleen, you know, your body has ways to recycle them parts, right? When that doesn't happen, you know, then you can build up senescent cells or even worse, tumor, cancer, etc., right? But that starts here. That starts here, right? So this has to be a very exact process because these charged particles cannot just disperse anywhere throughout your body. They will be dangerous. They are dangerous. They do cause disease. Electricians have to wear special outfits to deal with high voltage electricity. Your cells is the same way. That's why we have pigments. That's why we have pigments, and those pigments are outfitted with different elements so that they can deal with charged particles. They can deal with electricity. They can deal with all of these different things that in other tissues will be dangerous. So oxygen has to be carefully guided because oxygen is going to determine where these sparks are flying, right? So oxygen is going to wait right here. These guys are going to go through the pigments, and once they get to the last pigment and there's nowhere else for them to go, they're going to be converted back into water where they are perfectly harmless. And they can move through your body as water, totally harmless, until they get somewhere else and they need to be broken down and recycled into energy again for another process in another part of the body. But water is the safe package, right? So they can be harnessed somewhere for energy, or they can be harnessed somewhere for information, right? Another part of the story. But we got to get this quantum tunneling thing, right? And always is going to be a familiar number to you, right? So the magic number in quantum tunneling here in the electron transport chain is 14, right? 14 angstroms is the magic number. 14, just like 12 hours in a week, right? I was going to say days in a week, but it's not days in a week, right? You got days and nights, right? So you got 7 days plus 7 nights, 14 parts of Osiris, 14 angstroms is the magic number inside your electron transport chain, right? Very important for free radical production. Very important for free radical production. The more free radical production you get here, the faster you age. And they haven't even come up with no theory of aging for this yet, but this is a thing. So look for this coming in the future. Remember, you heard it here first. Maybe we need to make up a theory to go along with this. We read it. This is the melanin is anabolic theory of aging, right? The free radicals that pop off the electron transport chain, right, cause a lot of damage to the cell. And if the damage is too high, your body will destroy that cell and recycle it. Your body's recycling cells on a regular basis. This is one of the primary signals that tells your body when it's time to get rid of that cell. Right? So in the world of cells, this controls aging. In the world of cells, this controls aging. It's just cells all have different aging systems, right? Some cells replace themselves every 120 days. Some replace themselves every 4 days. Some every 40, so. But when the free radical production here gets crazy, the cell has to go. Your body doesn't even waste time doing a lot of repair. It'll just gobble that whole cell up and just make a new one. That's how dangerous it is. It's not even worth tinkering around in there after a certain point. Just recycle that whole cell. Right? So quantum tunneling is a large part of this. So quantum mechanics, again, I'm showing you this because of how important it is to different aspects of health in our body. But B, I'm telling you this also because of our timeline. It's not possible that we could have understood how cells work without quantum mechanics, without the science of the underworld, right? The world that's beneath the world of matter, that makes the world of matter, the world just beneath it, subatomic particles. Without the laws of subatomic particles, there's no way to properly understand what's going on with the human body. Period. Just got guesstimates. All you have is guesstimates at best, right? So this is quantum tunneling in the most important space, right? Which determines a large, especially when you get into like brain health. Somebody typed in the chat earlier, what are my thoughts on ALS, right? My thoughts on ALS is start getting the books. Start getting the books and getting in class every day. That's my thoughts on ALS. Join the Patreon. Get with the movement. Right? We have, what do we have? We have some goodies. We have Inky is the brainwave. No, Inky and the brainwave. We have that. We have quite a few books, right, that you can get started on if you have questions on ALS. But I would say catch up. That is what you got to do. You got to catch up. We got a lot going on. Right? All right. So just for somebody that's interested, because I know there will be somebody interested, right? If we're going to put angstrom is 0.1 nanometer, right? 0.1 nanometer is an angstrom, right? So I know it's people that's deeply into the research of nanotechnology and nanobots and nano this and that. There's no greater creator of nanotech than the water in your body. The water in your body is the best architect, engineer that we know. Yeah. Yeah, my foot is telling me I got to sit down for a second. Let me think. Yeah, so I think we kind of got it. I think we kind of got it. Yeah, I think we kind of got it. Right? I think we kind of have it, right? So hopefully this makes a little bit more difference now. Right? We got the pyramid, right? The delta, right? Which is the difference. Slash potential. We're gonna put that right in there in parentheses. Right? That's what the pyramid slash delta represents. And then we have the electrical potential. Or voltage. We can throw voltage up in there. Right? And then this is just the membrane. And remember, go to AmericanHealer.website and get your Batana oil. Right? Batana oil is the natural substance that goes into the membrane tissues and increases the electrical potential. That's why you have 8 different types of vitamin E, right? The Batana oil has a concentration of all of them, right? So go get that Batana oil. Go get that Batana oil, right? Also, remember, this is why we need fats, right? So we don't want to have diets that exclude fats. We don't want to have diets that exclude carbohydrates, because this is where that comes from, right? And we don't want to have diets that exclude proteins, because proteins are where the pigments come from, right? So we need our carbohydrates, our fats, and our proteins, or our amino acids, to build up the structures that facilitate the electrical, the magnetic, the light show, etc. All of the fancy stuff.
This is why you have to go to Amazon and get the book, Rich Abs, Poor Abs, now.